Hey guys, tonight's story starts with a storm, a tavern, and a very bad idea. You remember rum, laughter, and a promise of gold. You do not remember volunteering to be tied to a mast at sunrise while a man named Toothless Jim yells about democracy. The ocean roars like a god with a grudge. The deck tilts beneath you like a drunk trying to dance, and the horizon looks both endless and very judgmental. You've stumbled into the golden age of piracy, a world of freedom, filth, and questionable hygiene. And whether you meant to or not, you're here for the ride. But before you get too cozy, I just wanted to take a quiet moment to mention something new. I recently made another channel called Science to Fall Asleep To. It's a little different, but just as good for drifting off. You can find the link down in the description and pinned comment. But while you're here, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And of course, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Alrighty, that's enough instructions for one night, isn't it? Now, get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You wake to the sound of waves arguing with the hull and a headache that feels like divine punishment. The air smells like salt, sweat, and rope, the kind of scent that sticks to your soul. You try to sit up, only to realize the floor is moving, and not in the poetic, life is a journey way. Someone laughs nearby, a laugh like gravel in a barrel. You blink toward it and see a man with a beard so vast it might qualify for citizenship. He hands you a wooden bucket and says, "Welcome aboard, matey." His tone suggests you had a choice in the matter. You're on a ship, a real one, the kind that creaks like it's keeping secrets. Around you, men move in practiced chaos, hauling ropes and shouting about sails as if any of this makes sense. You try to stand, but your legs appear to have resigned without notice. The bearded man claps your shoulder hard enough to reset your spine. "Best start scrubbin'. Captain don't like passengers." You want to say you're not a passenger, but you also can't remember boarding. Your mouth tastes like rum, wood smoke, and shame. The deck stretches before you like an obstacle course made of splinters. You stumble to a patch of planks that look only mildly hostile and begin scrubbing. The water in the bucket is gray before you start, and you don't want to ask why. The ship lurches and you lurch with it, discovering a new kind of seasickness that's both emotional and physical. Somewhere above, a voice bellows orders, deep and theatrical. When you look up, you see him, the captain. He stands on the quarterdeck like he was born to shout at clouds. His coat is red velvet faded to the color of dried blood, and his hat is so wide it could provide shade for the entire crew. He's adorned with gold rings, trinkets, and what appears to be someone else's earring collection. When he grins, you count more gaps than teeth. "Welcome to the Mercy's Folly," he declares. "You're part of the crew now, whether by choice or by bad luck." The crew cheers. You do not. You try to recall last night. There was a tavern. There was a round of rum, then another, then a man who said something about adventure. He promised sun, gold, and freedom. You remember laughing, slamming your mug against his, and agreeing to one little voyage. The rest is fog, rum-colored and treacherous. You think about asking to go home, but judging by the number of cutlasses within arm's reach, home seems to have sailed without you. The hours drag like an anchor. You swab, slip, and learn to duck when someone shouts duck. Lunch is a slab of salted pork that crunches in ways meat shouldn't. The cook eyes you suspiciously, like he's still deciding whether you're edible. You thank him anyway and pretend the hardtack doesn't taste like heartbreak. By the time the sun tilts west, your skin is stiff with salt, your back aches, and you've accepted that your bucket is now your closest friend. As dusk settles, the sea glows copper, and the crew grows louder. Someone strikes up a song about a mermaid and a barrel of rum, and the rhythm catches you before you can resist. For the first time, you stop fighting the motion of the ship and let it carry you. The captain strides by, humming along and clapping his one good hand. He gives you a nod that could mean approval or impending doom. It's hard to tell with him. Later, you collapse near the rail, the horizon fading into a bruise of pink and blue. The ocean stretches forever, mocking and magnificent. A gull circles overhead, laughing in the way only gulls can, like it knows something you don't. You close your eyes, feeling the hum of the waves through the wood beneath you. Somewhere deep in the ship, the timbers groan like old bones, and you realize the sound is oddly comforting. Night falls slow, thick, and humid. Lanterns flicker along the deck, painting everything gold and shadow. The crew settles into quiet murmurs, the kind of silence born from exhaustion and unspoken stories. You find yourself staring at the stars, trying to remember their names, realizing they look the same here as they did on land, and yet everything feels different. The captain's voice cuts through the night. "To freedom," he says, raising his bottle. The men echo him, rough voices tangled with the wind. You lift your cup of whatever passes for rum and whisper the word, not sure if you mean it. Freedom. It rolls around your tongue like a joke you don't quite get yet. Somewhere between the creak of wood and the crash of waves, you start to understand. This isn't an adventure. It's a sentence one you signed without reading. But as the ship rocks gently and the sea sings its low, endless lullaby, a strange peace seeps in. You're here now. Whether by choice or by bad luck, you're part of the crew. And tomorrow, when the sun rises over the restless horizon, you'll learn what that really means. The deck heaves beneath you like a beast with hiccups, every board shifting in its own direction, conspiring to keep you from maintaining any semblance of dignity. You clutch a rope for balance, which turns out to be the wrong rope, because a moment later a sail drops and someone screams about nearly dying. You mumble an apology no one hears and focus on breathing through your mouth, though that proves to be a terrible idea given the smell, salt, fish, and a faint undertone of despair. Someone shouts, "Find your sea legs," as if they're tucked in your pockets. You check anyway. They are not. Your job today, apparently, is to scrub the deck. It sounds simple until the ship decides to move every time you lower the bucket. The brine sloshes, the brush slips, and you find yourself crawling like a particularly determined crab. The sun beats down, your shirt clings to your back, and your hands burn with salt and splinters. Each stroke of the brush feels personal, as if the ship resents your efforts to clean it. A man with no eyebrows passes by and says, "She bites harder if you scrub too soft." You're not sure if he's joking, but the deck creaks beneath you like it's listening. By midday, your stomach declares mutiny. The constant rolling turns your insides into soup, and before you can politely excuse yourself, you lean over the rail and empty whatever optimism you had left into the ocean. The sea doesn't seem to mind. It takes everything, after all. When you turn back, a sailor slaps your shoulder. "Better out than in," he says, grinning through 3 teeth. You think about pushing him overboard, but decide you're too tired for murder. The crew moves around you with a grace that feels impossible. They walk the shifting planks like dancers, balancing barrels, ropes, and their tempers. You watch them and wonder if you'll ever move like that, or if you'll die as you lived awkward and confused. A boy no older than 16 shows you how to tie a knot that looks like witchcraft. You try to copy him, and somehow end up tangling your own hand to the rope. He doesn't laugh. He just unties you with the patience of someone used to beginners who don't survive long. In the afternoon, the sky shifts from blue to a glare so bright it burns through your eyelids. You're ordered to climb the rigging, though no one specifies why. The ropes are rough, the wind loud, and every movement feels like an argument with gravity. Halfway up, your hands slip, and your heart decides to exit your body early. Somehow, you cling there, trembling, staring down at a world made entirely of water. The man below Beard, missing ear, yells, "Don't look down," which, of course, is the only thing you do. The sea stretches forever, and for a moment, you understand how small you are. When you finally reach the top, the world goes quiet, except for the flap of canvas and the endless hush of waves. The ship looks almost peaceful from here, the chaos below softened by distance. You breathe in, and for the first time, the air doesn't taste like sickness. It smells like salt and wind and something else, something alive. Maybe this is what they mean by sea legs. You grip the rope a little tighter and let the rhythm of the waves move through you instead of against you. By dusk, you're filthy, blistered, and still swaying even when the deck stands still. The captain passes by, his coat snapping in the wind, and gives you a nod that might be approval or amusement. Either way, it's something. The crew gathers for their evening ration of rum, and you join them, still trying to pretend you belong. The drink burns like fire and comfort all at once. A fiddler starts a tune that wobbles but never falls apart, and someone hums along. You catch yourself tapping your foot, unsteady but keeping time. When night falls, you collapse into your hammock, an invention clearly designed by someone who hated comfort. It swings gently, cradling you in motion, and though your stomach protests, your body gives in. The ship creaks around you, wood groaning like old bones, and outside, the sea whispers against the hull. You close your eyes and think maybe, just maybe, you'll learn to stop fighting it. The horizon can have your balance for now. You'll find your footing later, somewhere between the stars and the tide. Morning begins with the sound of someone vomiting off the side of the ship, which at this point could easily be you. The air is thick with brine and smoke, and the sun crawls over the horizon like it's hungover too. You drag yourself toward the smell of food, or at least something claiming the title, and find the crew already gathered around a battered table nailed to the deck. Metal bowls clatter, spoons scrape, and conversation hums at the volume of men who've accepted disappointment as a lifestyle. A dented pot sits at the center, steaming faintly in a way that suggests danger. The cook, a man with one eye and two knives, ladles the contents into your bowl. "Eat quick," he says, "before it eats you back." The stew looks like it's lost several fights. You stir it once, and it sighs. Bits of pork, or possibly something that once lived near pork, float among gray lumps you decide not to identify. You take a cautious bite, and it's exactly as bad as you imagined, like chewing a rumor. Next comes the hardtack, which looks like a cookie, but behaves like masonry. You watch a man crack one against the edge of his bowl and inspect the damage to both. Neither wins. Fingers, a wiry sailor with a grin too wide for his face, notices your struggle and slides over. "You gotta soak it," he says, pouring a finger of rum into your bowl. The liquid fizzes slightly on contact, makes it soft. You nod, though it's unclear whether he's referring to the bread or his liver. He dunks his own biscuit until it sinks, then fishes it out with his fingers, hence the name, probably, and takes a triumphant bite. See? Almost edible. You follow suit. The bread absorbs the rum and dissolves into something vaguely chewable. The burn of the alcohol cuts through the taste of despair, and suddenly you understand why every sailor on this ship seems permanently tipsy. Rum isn't a drink here. It's survival. A balm, an excuse, a religion. The bottle moves around the table like a holy relic, and each man takes his sip with the solemnity of prayer. The cook bangs a pan against the railing to silence a brewing argument about whose turn it is to scrape the bottom of the stew pot. "No fighting over scraps," he barks. "Last man who did, I used for seasoning." No one doubts him. You take another mouthful and try not to think about how chewy it is. The texture defies nature. The flavor, mercy. You force it down because hunger doesn't negotiate. Across from you, Fingers tells a story about a captain who once tried to stretch a month's supply of pork into 2. He describes the maggots in vivid detail, as if they were old friends. The men laugh through mouths full of food. You do too, mostly because laughter seems safer than crying. Someone claps you on the back and says, "You'll get used to it." You can't tell if he's talking about the meal or the life. After breakfast, the bowls are rinsed in seawater, no soap, no ceremony, and stacked in a crate that smells faintly of the ocean and regret. The cook wipes his hands on his apron, leaving streaks that could be grease or blood or both. He mutters in 3 languages, and even without understanding the words, you're certain every fish in a mile radius feels personally insulted. The sun climbs higher, baking the deck and the crew alike. The smell of salt and smoke clings to your clothes, and your stomach begins to make uneasy negotiations with the stew. Fingers lights a pipe and leans against the rail, exhaling smoke that twists into the wind. "Best part of the day," he says. You look around at the sweat, the filth, the endless horizon, and try to see what he sees. Maybe it's the calm before the shouting starts, or maybe it's just the rum talking. When the cook finally shuffles below deck, the crew scatters to their duties, leaving you alone with the sea. You stare at the empty bowl, feeling a strange kind of satisfaction. You survived breakfast. The ship creaks beneath your feet like it's laughing, and you almost laugh with it. Somewhere overhead, gulls wheel in lazy circles, waiting for their chance at the leftovers. You can't blame them. Out here, everything's hungry for something. The morning fog hangs thick over the deck, clinging to your clothes like damp guilt. The crew gathers in a loose semicircle, half asleep and wholly suspicious, while the captain stands on a barrel, as though the sea itself needs to see him. In his hand is a piece of parchment so weathered it looks more like a relic than a document. He unrolls it with great ceremony, the kind that suggests this isn't just another day of shouting and swabbing. The ship creaks beneath your feet as if leaning closer to listen. "The articles," he declares, his voice rasping with pride and rum. "Our law, our liberty, our curse, if you're fool enough to test it." The parchment trembles slightly in the wind. The ink faded, names scrawled across it in every style, imaginable, bold, sloppy, blood-stained. He reads, aloud each rule with a flourish, like a priest at a particularly dramatic sermon. No fighting on board, equal shares of plunder, death for theft, silence during watch. The punishment for mutiny, he adds, with a smile too wide to be friendly, is left to his imagination, which seems like the worst possible arrangement. You stand among the others, shifting uncomfortably as the list continues. Every few lines, the crew murmurs their approval, some crossing themselves, others spitting for luck. The air feels heavier with each word, thick with something between superstition and faith. The captain finishes reading and holds out a quill. "Each man signs," he says, "so the sea knows who she owns." The man ahead of you, a sailor with tattoos curling up his neck like ivy, pricks his thumb and presses it to the page. "Ink don't last," he mutters. "Blood does." The next man follows suit, and then the next. When the quill reaches you, your hand hesitates. The parchment looks alive, names, overlapping names, smudged fingerprints, a faint shimmer of salt like the ocean has already touched it. You dip the quill in ink anyway, and sign your name with something between confidence and panic. It comes out looking like both. When everyone's finished, the captain rolls the parchment carefully and tucks it into a brass tube hanging from his belt. "We're bound now," he says, "not just by choice, but by the sea herself. Cross the code, and she'll take her due." His voice lowers to a near whisper. Some say quicker than I will. A few of the men chuckle nervously. Someone coughs. You catch the faintest tremor of something beneath the hull, like the ship itself exhaling. The crew disperses slowly, muttering as they return to their work. You linger near the rail, watching the water churn against the boards. It's darker than usual, green edged with black, like ink that's still drying. A sailor sidles up beside you, a thin man with a scar down, his jaw and a permanent squint. "Don't mock the articles," he says quietly. "Last fool who did got himself pulled overboard on a calm sea." You laugh, because it sounds absurd. He doesn't. "Wasn't the sea that killed him," he adds. "It was what came up from under." You tell him you don't believe in curses. He nods. "No one does," he says, "until they start hearing things." His gaze drifts toward the water, unfocused, like he's listening for something you can't hear. Then he walks away, leaving you with the uneasy feeling that maybe the ocean's been listening too. Later, as you're hauling rope, the wind shifts. The sails snap sharply, though there's barely a breeze, and somewhere deep in the ship a low groan echoes through the wood. The sound isn't quite human, but it's close enough to make the hairs rise on your arms. Fingers swears it's just the hull settling, but you notice he avoids stepping near the place the noise came from. That night, the captain toasts the new signings. Rum flows, laughter grows, and for a moment it feels almost like celebration. But beneath it all, the ship keeps creaking in slow, deliberate rhythm, like the sea knocking softly from below. You try to convince yourself it's nothing a trick of the wind, the wood, the waves. Yet as the lanterns flicker and the laughter fades, you can't shake the thought that the ship is listening again, remembering every name written on that cursed parchment. And if she remembers, she also keeps count. You spend your morning staring at the ropes like they're snakes, pretending to be tools. The bosun, a man with a face like dried leather and a voice that could peel paint, informs you that you'll be learning to climb the rigging today. You tell him you're not sure you're ready for that kind of spiritual journey, and he tells you to move before he finds creative uses for the cat-o' nine tails. So you climb, slowly, awkwardly, regretting every career decision that led to this moment. The ropes burn your palms as you pull yourself upward, each knot a new opportunity to fall to your death. The wind hits harder the higher you go, pushing and shoving like a drunken friend who doesn't know when to stop. Below, the deck shrinks until the men look like ants arguing over crumbs. You cling to the rigging, breathing through your teeth, trying to look brave but mostly looking like a wet laundry line that lost the will to live. The bosun yells from below, "Move like you mean it." You move, though it's unclear what you mean. When you finally reach the crossbeam, the ship sways beneath you, and suddenly you understand how gods must feel terrified and very far from the ground. The ocean stretches in every direction, a glittering blue that looks harmless until you remember it's miles deep and entirely uninterested in your survival. The wind roars in your ears, carrying the smell of salt and tar and something metallic that might be your own fear. You glance down again and make the immediate, life-affirming decision never to look down again. A gull swoops past, screaming directly in your face, because apparently nature enjoys mockery. You cling tighter, mutter something impolite, and focus on your task, unfurling the sail without somehow becoming part of it. The canvas billows like it's alive, snapping hard enough to rattle your bones. The sound is beautiful and violent, like applause from a crowd that wants blood. For a fleeting moment, you stop thinking about falling. You just move with it, pulling, tying, shouting to men below who can't hear you over the wind. The ship surges forward, the sail catches, and you feel it power, freedom, danger, all at once. Then the bosun's voice cuts through the moment. "Get down before you blow away." You don't need telling twice. Back on deck, your legs are shaking so badly you look like a puppet whose strings were cut. The crew grins as you stumble past. One of them hands you a coil of rope and says, "Next lesson, knots." He demonstrates with the ease of someone who's tied more ropes than relationships. You copy him, or try to, but somehow the rope ends up tied to itself in an existential crisis. "You'll get it," he says, untying your disaster with a flick of his wrist. Or you won't. Either way, the sea decides. You smile weakly and wonder how often she decides poorly. By afternoon, your hands are raw, Your arms ache, and the bosun has invented at least 6 new ways to call you useless. The ropes bite, the salt stings, and you're fairly certain you've swallowed enough seawater to qualify as part ocean. Yet, when the sun starts to sink, painting the waves in molten gold, something shifts. The world softens. The crew hums an old tune as they secure the lines, voices blending with the creak of the ship. You work alongside them, slower but steadier now, finding rhythm in the motion. Then the sea changes. One moment calm, the next restless. The waves grow taller, darker, whispering threats. You hear it, the deep, resonant groan of water against wood, like something ancient turning in its sleep. The bosun barks orders, the crew scrambles, and you follow, moving without thinking. Rain spits from the clouds, and the deck becomes a slick dance floor of chaos. You haul ropes, pull sails, and realize you're no longer afraid of falling, you're afraid of stopping, because if you stop, the sea will take you. When it's over, when the sky clears and the wind gentles, the bosun gives you a single nod. It's not praise exactly, but close enough to keep you breathing. You collapse by the mast, lungs burning, clothes soaked, heart hammering like it's learning a new rhythm. The stars begin to pierce the twilight above, sharp and cold, and you stare at them until the ship's sway feels like your own heartbeat. The bosun passes by and mutters, "Not bad for a land rat." You grin, too tired, and to speak, and watch the waves roll on endlessly, silver under the moonlight. You don't say it out loud, but you know it now. The art of not dying at sea isn't about strength or skill. It's about listening to her rhythm, letting her toss you, test you, and still finding a way to hold on. By sunset, the air smells like salt, smoke, and exhaustion. The crew moves slower now, their voices lower, their eyes turn toward the quarterdeck, where the quartermaster stands beside a barrel that might as well be sacred. He holds a tin ladle with the ceremony of a priest about to bless the masses. This, you learn, is the most important moment of the day, the rationing of rum. It's not just a drink. It's currency, medicine, religion, and therapy all poured into one chipped cup. When your turn comes, he doesn't look at you so much as measure your worth by how well you've worked. His hands are steady, his expression not. The ladle dips, the rum sloshes, and suddenly you're holding more than a drink, you're holding permission to forget. It smells like fire and comfort, like bad decisions preserved in alcohol. The first swallow burns its way down, lighting a trail through your ribs. The second smooths the edges. By the third, you're convinced you might survive this life after all. Around you, the crew drinks like it's holy ritual. Conversations bloom and wilt in the same breath. Someone's telling a story about a mermaid with too many teeth. Someone else swears they once saw an albatross wearing an earring. Fingers plays dice with a man missing half his nose, the two of them laughing like old friends or future enemies. It's hard to tell. The bosun leans against the mast, humming something that sounds like a lullaby until you notice the lyrics involve strangling a tax collector. You sit near the railing, the ocean breathing heavy below. The stars creep out one by one, shy at first, then bold enough to glitter across the sky like spilled salt. The rum warms you from the inside, slow and dangerous. You realize the sea's never still, it shifts, sighs, murmurs, and somewhere deep beneath it all, there's rhythm. You start to hear it, the way the waves keep time with the creak of the hull and the low hum of the crew. It feels almost like music. The quartermaster returns for another round, pouring with less ceremony now. He catches you staring into the barrel and grins. "Careful, lad," he says. "Stare too long. You'll see your future in there, and she won't be smiling." You laugh, but he doesn't. He just moves on, leaving you with the uncomfortable thought that maybe he wasn't joking. As the night deepens, someone starts a song. A fiddle scratches out the tune, slow at first, then rolling like the tide. The lyrics are half nonsense and half confession. Stories of lost ports and worse women, of storms that took everything but left the rum. The crew joins in, their voices rough and off-key, but together they sound almost human. You don't know the words, but you hum along anyway, your voice blending into the rest until you can't tell where yours ends and theirs begin. The captain appears briefly, barefoot and grinning, his coat unbuttoned, his hair wild in the wind. He raises his cup to no one in particular and says, "To the sea may she take us gently or not at all." The men cheer, because that's all you can do when your God is as unpredictable as the tide. He drinks, vanishes below deck, and the music swells louder, more desperate, like it's trying to outsing the ocean itself. You drink until the world feels soft around the edges. The deck sways, but this time it's not the sea, it's the rum pulling you closer to sleep. Fingers throws an arm around your shoulder, sloshing his drink dangerously close to your ear. "You'll get used to it," he says, though it's unclear if he means the drink, the song, or the life. You nod anyway, because the rum's already made. Philosopher of you both. Later, you lie in your hammock, the ship rocking like an old lullaby. The taste of rum lingers sweet, smoky, cruel. Somewhere, someone is still singing, their voice carried off by the wind, until it's just another note in the ocean's endless song. You close your eyes and listen. It's not peace exactly, but it's close enough. Out here, that counts for something. You first notice it when he starts arguing with the sea. Not yelling, arguing. Full sentences, pauses, rebuttals. You're coiling rope on the main deck when the captain leans over the rail, gazing at the waves as if expecting them to answer. "You're a fickle mistress," he says softly, then adds, "No, don't start with that again." The crew keeps working, pretending this is normal, which might be the most alarming part. You glance at Fingers, who just shrugs. "Best let him win," he says. "She's stubborn." The captain is a man of contradictions. His coat looks like it's been stitched together from other men's mistakes, yet he moves with the dignity of someone convinced he was born for command. He quotes Shakespeare one moment and curses like a dockside demon the next. During dinner, he recites bits of philosophy between bites of salt pork, then accuses the quartermaster of being a Greek spy. The quartermaster, unfazed, corrects his pronunciation and passes the rum. You learn that the captain sleeps little and dreams loudly. Some nights, you hear him pacing above deck, muttering about the horizon, the tides, the voices in the mast. Other nights, laughter bursts from his cabin, wild, bright, unshared. Once, when the crew was silent during a fog so thick it swallowed the stars, he burst out onto the deck and shouted, "Even the world holds its breath for me." Then he tipped his hat to the fog and went back inside. No one said a word. His quarters are a shrine to chaos. Maps cover every surface, layered with strange symbols drawn in ink that looks suspiciously red. Shelves overflow with books that smell of mildew and obsession. There's a birdcage hanging by the window empty, except for a feather that twitches when the wind moves. And in the corner, in a small wooden box lined with silk, lives the Admiral, a rat the size of a fist, gray and patchy, eyes too bright for comfort. The captain feeds it crumbs from his hand, whispering things you can't hear. Once, you pass by and catch him mid-conversation. "No, Admiral," he says, "we can't eat the cook. He's still useful." He pauses, listening, then nods. "Aye, but we'll keep the idea in mind." The crew treats the captain's madness like bad weather, unpredictable, but survivable. They follow his orders without question, not out of loyalty, but because somehow, despite everything, he always seems to be right. When he says the wind will shift, it does. When he says another ship is near, you spot sails on the horizon within the hour. It's unnerving, like the sea itself is in on his madness. One evening, after a long day of patching sails and pretending to know what you're doing, the captain calls for you. His cabin smells like candle wax and secrets. He's standing by the window, staring out at the sunset, bleeding into the water. "Do you know what it is to own nothing?" he asks without turning. You open your mouth, but he keeps talking. The land has laws, the sky has gods, but the sea, she belongs to no one. That's why she's honest. That's why she's cruel. He finally looks at you, eyes sharp as broken glass. Remember that, boy. The moment you think you've mastered her, she'll take you as payment. Then, as if the mood never happened, he smiles and offers you rum. You leave his cabin with more questions than courage. The wind howls that night, carrying laughter that might be his or might not. The sails snap like they're trying to escape, and somewhere below, the Admiral squeaks in, perfect rhythm. You wonder if he's truly mad, or if madness is just what the sea makes of men who look at it too long. At dawn, he's on deck again, coat whipping in the wind, eyes fixed on the horizon. He speaks to no one, yet every man moves in sync with his silence. When he finally does speak, it's soft but certain. There she is, he says, pointing toward a distant line of dark sails. Our next prize. No telescope, no lookout, just certainty. And sure enough, within the hour, black sails rise against the sun. The crew cheers. The captain just smiles that sharp, unsettling smile. You look at him, then the man, the myth, the madness, and you understand why they follow him. Not because they trust him, but because he's already part of whatever storm is coming. When he laughs, the sea laughs with him, and when he goes quiet, even the wind holds its breath. The quartermaster keeps the only thing more feared than the captain's temper, a ledger bound in cracked leather and bad decisions. It sits on his table like a holy book, surrounded by dice, coins, and the occasional dried stain no one wants to identify. Every number, every mark inside it, decides who gets fed, who gets flogged, and who gets quietly thrown overboard when no one's looking. You learn this quickly when you ask for extra rations, and he looks at you like you've requested his soul. Fair shares, he says flatly, and you ain't earned fair yet. He's not a large man, but he carries the kind of weight that doesn't come from muscle. It's authority, the kind that can crush you with a glance and a muttered curse. His voice sounds like gravel being poured through a funnel, and when he speaks, even the rats stop chewing to listen. He wears a hat that used to be black, a belt full of keys and daggers, and a grin that never means comfort. His name is Dawes, though everyone calls him Judge. You get the feeling it's not ironic. Disputes come to him daily: who stole, whose rum, who cheated whose dice, who insulted whose mother in which language. He listens to each story with the patience of a man who's heard every variety of stupidity. Then he settles it in the simplest way possible. 2 dice, 1 roll. Fate's fairer than I am, he says, tossing the bone cubes onto the table. The loser accepts it because no one argues with the man who keeps the list of who gets paid after the next raid. Justice at sea, it seems, is loud, fast, and occasionally drunk. When you first see him record the shares of plunder, it's like watching someone divide eternity. He dips his quill in ink and mutters as he writes, counting by memory alone. Captain's double share, quartermaster's share, crew shares, wounded share, ship's repairs. The rhythm of his words is hypnotic. Coins clink into piles, jewels scatter like spilled light, and all the while he hums an off-key tune. You realize the man might be half poet, half undertaker. Every tally he writes feels like a small prophecy. One evening, you find him on deck with the ledger open and the moonlight spilling over the pages. He's talking to it, not softly, either full sentences, like a confession. "Don't you start changing numbers on me now," he growls. "I've got witnesses." You step back quietly, because interrupting a man arguing with his own accounting seems suicidal. Later, Fingers tells you the story of the last sailor who tried to peek inside that book. They found him the next morning smiling, he says. Just smiling. Wouldn't stop. You decide curiosity is for people who want shorter lives. Your relationship with Dawes becomes one of polite avoidance. You hand over your cut, keep your mouth shut, and hope your name stays on the alive side of the page. But sometimes, when he's in a rare mood, he teaches you things. How to read the sea by the tilt of the deck. How to spot a ship fat with cargo just by the way it rides the horizon. How to gamble without losing everything but your trousers. Piracy, he tells you, isn't about stealing, it's about balance. You take too much, the sea takes you back. Fairness, lad. That's the trick. You want to believe he's being philosophical, but you've seen the way he grins when someone else's luck turns bad. You also learn what the word prize really means. It isn't treasure waiting to be found, it's someone else's ship, full of terrified men who didn't sign up for this kind of adventure. When the crew spots one on the horizon, Dawes closes his ledger, ties it shut with a bit of frayed rope, and pockets the dice. Time to earn your share, he says, and suddenly you're part of the arithmetic. The chase begins, the cannons roar, and you understand why his handwriting always looks a little shaky. Numbers are neat, battles are not. Afterward, when the smoke clears and the spoils are divided, Dawes opens the ledger again, calm as ever. He scratches your name beside a number and nods once, as if to say you exist now. The ink shines wetly in the lamplight, black and final. You catch your reflection in a puddle nearby, face streaked with soot, eyes a little harder, mouth set like it belongs here. You practice the look, because on this ship, ruthlessness is just another kind of balance. And if Dawes ever decides to cross your name out, you want the sea to think twice before following suit. You learn her moods before you learn her map. The Mercy's Folly isn't just a ship, she's a creature pretending to be one, old and proud and held together by rope, nails, and spite. Every plank seems to remember the last fool who stepped on it wrong. She groans in the morning, stretches at noon, and sulks at night when the wind dies. Her timbers pop and sigh like she's thinking it over. The carpenter swears she has a soul. Built her with me own hands, he says, tapping a beam with the tenderness of a lover. She remembers everything you do to her. You laugh, but when she shivers under your boots a moment later, the sound doesn't feel like coincidence. The deck always smells of tar, salt, and something faintly alive like the sea has found a way inside and refuses to leave. The ropes hum softly in the wind, the sails snap like the cracking of old bones, and below deck, the walls sweat with humidity and ghosts of past storms. You start to understand that she's never quiet. Even in calm weather, she mutters to herself, wood flexing, water slapping, chains clinking in a rhythm that almost feels conversational. You catch yourself listening more than you should, waiting for patterns, for meaning. Maybe that's how sailors go mad, one whisper at a time. Her name, painted in faded gold on the stern, catches the light differently every day. The Mercy's Folly. No one agrees on who named her or why. Some say the first captain wanted to remind God what a bad idea Mercy was. Others claim the sea named her herself, because she's the kind of joke the ocean likes best, beautiful and doomed. When you ask Fingers about it, he just shrugs. She's like the rest of us, he says, too stubborn to sink. You begin to recognize her rhythms. When she's in a good mood, the sails billow full, the deck feels steady, and the wind sings through the rigging like a promise. When she's angry, she bucks hard, her masts groaning like old knees. The carpenter curses and kisses her beams in the same breath, while the captain stands at the helm whispering sweet nothings to her like she's an unpredictable lover. Sometimes, the ship answers him with a creak so deep it sounds almost human. At night, you sleep near her heart. That's what they call the area just above the keel, where the sounds are loudest. The boards throb faintly with every wave, each one in perfect rhythm with your pulse until you can't tell which is yours anymore. It's comforting, in a strange way, like being cradled by something vast and temperamental that could crush you but hasn't yet decided to. You fall asleep to her lullaby, the endless slap of waves, the slow groan of wood, the faint clatter of something loose that no one ever quite finds. During storms, she transforms. Lightning flashes along her masts, rain batters her sides, and she roars against the wind like a beast refusing to die. The crew scrambles across her deck, tying, shouting, praying, and through it all she moves wild but deliberate, like she knows exactly how much chaos to allow. Once, during a squall, you see the carpenter press his ear to her hull and murmur, "Hold, girl, hold." Later, when the storm breaks and the stars return, you realize she did. You start to think of her less as the ship and more as her, the way the others do without meaning to. You pat her rails when you pass, whisper a quiet thank you when she spares your balance. The superstitions make more sense now. You don't whistle on deck, don't curse the wind, don't insult her name, not out of belief. Exactly, but out of respect. She's earned it. One evening, as the sun dips low and the sea burns orange, you sit by the stern and watch the reflection of her hull flicker in the water. For a moment, the surface smooths, and you see her full shape beneath the waves, dark, graceful, alive. She looks like she's breathing, then the wind shifts, the water ripples, and she's gone again. The captain says ships like her don't just sail, they remember. Every storm, every death, every whispered confession under the deckboards. You think about that as you lay in your hammock, the Mersey's Folly creaking softly around you, the ocean sighing beneath. You can almost feel her listening, holding it all inside, your fears, your laughter, your small, fragile life, like a secret she'll keep until the sea finally takes her back. It starts as a whisper, a shift in the air you can feel before you. See it. The sky goes from blue to bruised in minutes, clouds rolling in like an army that knows it's already won. The wind changes direction, snapping the sails so hard they sound like cannon fire. The crew moves fast, shouting over one another, pulling ropes, tying lines, running like men chased by invisible hands. You don't know what's coming yet, but everyone else does, and that's somehow worse. The sea darkens, rising and falling in long, deliberate breaths. Then you see it on the horizon, black, tall, moving fast. The storm isn't a thing that happens to you. It's a thing that decides to happen at you. The first wave hits hard enough to make your teeth ache. Water slaps across the deck, cold and alive, dragging everything loose with it. You grab the nearest rope, though it's unclear whether you're holding it or it's holding you. The captain stands at the helm, coat flapping like a flag of defiance, shouting orders that no one can hear, but everyone somehow obeys. Reef the sails, batten down the hatches. His voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. When lightning splits the sky, you see his face, illuminated eyes, wild, grin feral. He looks like a man having an argument with God and winning. You climb toward the mast because the bosun screams for hands aloft, and apparently you're now one of those hands. The wind claws at your face, the rain pelts you sideways, and the world becomes a smear of gray and motion. Every plank beneath you groans, the ropes tighten like tendons, and somewhere below, the Mersey's Folly howls her own protest. The storm doesn't feel like weather, it feels personal. The sea wants you, and she's not being subtle about it. You can't see the horizon anymore, just walls of water folding and unfolding, towering above the ship before crashing down with a noise that swallows thought. Men vanish and reappear between waves like ghosts. Someone shouts for the carpenter, someone else prays. Fingers skids, past you on his knees, clutching a bucket, and yells something that sounds like, "She's taking water." You want to help, but you're too busy staying alive. The rain tastes metallic, the wind screams, and the ship feels less like a vessel and more like a stubborn animal refusing to drown. The captain doesn't steer anymore, he wrestles. He curses the storm by name, calls it coward, calls it lover. "Is that all you've got?" He bellows into the black sky, as if daring the lightning to aim higher. The thunder answers immediately. The crew groans in unison, half in awe, half in terror. You think he might be insane, but right now his madness feels like the only thing keeping the ship afloat. When the mast shudders, you cling tighter, arms shaking, lungs burning from salt and fear. You can't tell where your heartbeat ends and the storm begins. The sea is everywhere under you, over you, inside your mouth. You hear the groan of the hull, deep and pained, and for a moment you swear you feel her heart beating, fast and desperate, like yours. You whisper to her without thinking, "Hold on," and somehow she does. Then it happens, the break. One moment, everything is noise and chaos and fury. The next, it's gone. The rain thins, the thunder drifts away, and the sky begins to lighten at the edges. The wind exhales a long, tired sigh. You're still clutching the rope, knuckles white, when the silence hits. It's too sudden, too complete. You blink, waiting for the next wave, but it doesn't come. Just still water stretching endlessly, the horizon bleeding into pale gold. The deck is a wreck of ropes, barrels, and men too exhausted to care. Someone coughs, then laughs. Another starts cheering, weakly at first, then louder. Fingers throws his arms up and howls at the dawn. You join in, voice hoarse, half laughter, half disbelief. It doesn't sound like victory, it sounds like survival pretending to be joy. The captain leans against the helm, drenched and smiling faintly. "Told you she'd hold," he says, almost to himself. The crew erupts again, not because they believe him, but because they're alive enough to argue about it later. The sun rises slow and red, spreading light over the calm water. You sink to your knees, breathing hard, salt drying on your lips, the deck still trembling faintly beneath you. For the first time since the storm began, you can hear the ocean breathe. And though it's calm now, you know it's only resting. The sea never forgets its promises. You hear it first as a rumor passed along the deck like a contagious hope. Then the shout comes from above, "Land ho!" and every man on board freezes mid-task. The sound carries through the rigging like a miracle, though it's the kind of miracle that usually ends up costing you something later. You rush to the rail, eyes straining at the horizon, and there it is, a smudge of green and gray in the endless blue, wobbling in the distance like it's still deciding whether to exist. After weeks of sea and salt and the vague taste of madness, it looks like paradise, or at least something that isn't water. The crew erupts in cheers, hats thrown, hands slapped, voices raw with relief. Fingers starts dancing, which is generous of him, given his complete lack of rhythm. The captain stands at the helm, squinting toward the horizon, his grin sharp enough to cut rope. "Land," he repeats, as if he conjured it himself. Then he adds, "Prepare to drop anchor." The words hit like a benediction. You don't realize how tightly you've been holding yourself together until the tension snaps. You breathe like you haven't in days. As the island grows closer, details emerge, jagged rocks, crooked palms, a shoreline made of promise and disappointment. It's not the lush paradise of your imagination. It's smaller, harsher, the sort of place that looks like it resents being found. Still, it's land, real, solid, unmoving land. The crew cheers again, louder this time, because hope doesn't need accuracy, only opportunity. When the anchor splashes down and the ship steadies, men practically throw themselves overboard to swim the rest of the way. You follow, slipping into the warm shallows, boots sinking into sand that feels miraculous purely for not shifting under you. The beach greets you with the enthusiasm of a brick wall. The air smells of salt and rot, and the ground is covered in shells sharp enough to file your morals. You stagger forward, drop to your knees, and kiss the sand in a fit of gratitude. It tastes like dead fish. You cough, wipe your mouth, and try again anyway, because dignity has long since abandoned you. The ground remains unimpressed. "Kissing dirt now?" Fingers asks, trudging past. "Didn't think we'd reached that part of madness yet." You tell him to shut up and keep kissing, because at least this madness comes with footing. The others scatter, exploring what little there is to explore. A few palm trees lean drunkenly over the beach, their coconuts looking as though they might attack if provoked. The captain stands at the edge of the shore, hands on hips, studying the terrain like a man inspecting a bad investment. Gold, he declares suddenly. I can feel it. The crew cheers again, because it's that or mutiny. You, however, look around and see only rocks, birds, and an army of crabs glaring with territorial malice. The crabs, as it turns out, are the island's most dedicated residents. They swarm in slow, deliberate waves, pincers clicking like the sound of distant applause. One climbs onto your boot and stares up at you, as if deciding which part to eat first. You flick it away gently, unsure whether it's wise to offend the locals. Someone tries to catch one for dinner and earns a bloody finger for his trouble. The cook mutters about bad omens and goes back to sharpening his knife. By evening, the crew has built a fire, though. Half the smoke blows straight back into your faces. The captain sits beneath a palm tree, rum in hand, spinning dreams with that preacher's glint in his eye. We'll find gold here, he insists. Maybe buried by the Spanish, maybe dropped by the hand of God himself. Either way, it's ours. The men listen, half drunk on the idea, half on actual rum. The flames flicker across their faces, painting them in gold they'll never touch. You sit apart, watching the waves crash softly against the shore. The island hums with insects and the slow hiss of the tide reclaiming the beach. You think of the sea waiting just beyond the horizon, patient as ever. Maybe the captain's right, maybe there's treasure somewhere under this patch of rock, but you've learned that gold doesn't shine the same once it's yours. You pull your coat tighter and stare at the stars, bright and cold and far away. The captain toasts to riches, to freedom, to tomorrow. You lift your cup and drink, though what you're really toasting is survival. The fire crackles, the crabs keep watch, and somewhere in the dark beyond the shore, the Mercy's Folly sways gently on her anchor chain, listening. The first thing that hits you is the smell, an impossible blend of sea salt, sweat, and triumph, gone slightly sour. Nassau, the so-called Republic of Pirates. It's less a town and more an ongoing argument between civilization and chaos, with chaos winning by a comfortable margin. The harbor's crowded with ships leaning at odd angles, patched sails fluttering like flags of defiance. Cannon smoke lingers in the air, and somewhere, someone's playing a fiddle with all the precision of a drunk trying to charm his hangover. You step off the Mercy's Folly and into the noise, blinking at the riot of color and sound. It smells like freedom, which is to say it smells like bad choices waiting to happen. The streets twist like they were designed by someone who'd never been sober. Taverns spill out onto the dirt roads, their doors swinging open to reveal laughter, fights, and songs that have too many verses about drowning. The market's a miracle of useless treasures, a basket of stolen buttons, a tooth from an animal that probably still misses it, and a parrot that swears like it just lost at cards. Merchants shout prices no one intends to pay, and the air hums with the constant rhythm of haggling, swearing, and the occasional explosion of glass. You wander because everyone does. A man with 3 teeth and the confidence of 10 tells you about buried treasure just past the 3rd palm tree that looks suspicious. Another tries to sell you a map drawn in spilled ale. You buy it anyway, because it seems rude not to. The rum helps with that sort of logic. Speaking of rum, you find it everywhere. In mugs, in barrels, on breath, even splashed across your sleeve when a stranger toasts to the Queen's demise and slaps you on the back hard enough to shift your spine. Time dissolves in Nassau. Days blend into nights. Nights collapse into mornings that come too soon. You drink, sing, lose at dice, win at lying. You gain friends whose names you forget, and enemies you probably deserve. Someone challenges you to a duel using spoons. You accept because apparently that's who you are now. You wake the next morning in a hammock strung between 2 barrels, your mouth tasting like sugar and sin, and your left boot gone. You find it 3 days later hanging from a tavern sign, stuffed with limes and someone else's note that just says, "Thanks." There are moments that feel like belonging. A barmaid teaching you a shanty that doesn't end until everyone's too drunk to remember the words. A game of cards that lasts until dawn, where the stakes shift from money to pride to the promise of a story. The tattoo happens somewhere in the middle of it all. You only notice it later, when the sting catches your attention. A small design, crude but deliberate, a compass, half-finished, pointing nowhere. You don't remember who gave it to you, but it feels fitting. Pirates don't need directions. The captain disappears for a stretch, then reappears with a grin too wide to mean anything good. "We've got a new prize," he says, and just like that, Nassau shifts again from haven to hunting ground. The crew rallies, the ship restocked, the mood tipping from indulgence to anticipation. Freedom, you realize, is never still. It's just the space between storms. That night, you stand on the edge of the docks, watching lanterns flicker across the water. Music drifts from the taverns, low and uneven, like the town itself is humming. Behind you, laughter and arguments blur into a single sound that could almost be joy. Ahead, the sea glimmers dark and endless, whispering promises you're foolish enough to believe again. You think of the word republic and what it means here, men who've escaped kings only to become their own. It's not lawless, not really. It's just a different kind of law, one where survival is proof enough of worth. You touch the edge of your new tattoo, trace the ink beneath your skin, and feel the thrum of the ocean calling you back. The ship waits, the horizon breathes, and Nassau, loud, wild, and reeking of freedom, fades behind you like a dream that's both heaven and warning. He finds you in a tavern where the air's thick enough to chew and the floor's doing its best impression of the sea. The man looks too clean for Nassau, which should have been your first warning. His coat's still got buttons, his boots shine, and his smile could sell salvation to sinners. He slides into the seat across from you with the ease of someone who's made a living out of sitting where he's not invited. "You look like a man who's wasted on small fortunes," he says, and the way he says it makes you believe you've been personally insulted by destiny. You tell him, "You're just between storms." He laughs like he's heard that before. The pitch he gives is smooth riches, adventure, a ship faster than the wind itself, a true vessel of freedom, he calls it. You catch the faint accent, the roll of the and think it makes him sound trustworthy. Foolish thing, trust. The rum helps his story sound better, helps you imagine coins in your pocket, and a clean start somewhere far from your current hangover. You sign something you can't read, shake his hand, and think maybe this time you've outsmarted fate. You wake to find yourself wrong. The first clue is the shouting. The second is the smell wood, gunpowder, and panic. You're on a ship again, but not the one you remember. The deck's narrower, the sails trimmed neat and efficient, and the flag above you isn't your old skull and bones but a fleur-de-lis snapping proudly in the wind. The crew moves with precision, every man sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued. A voice barks an order, quick and cold, and you realize the language has changed. You've been press-ganged again, but this time with flair. The captain appears soon after, stepping out from his cabin like a man entering a duel he's already won. His coat's embroidered, his hair tied back, and his mustache could cut glass. When he speaks, it's with the kind of disdain usually reserved for poetry critiques. "You are new," he says, looking you up and down like he's assessing a stain. You nod, trying not to look like someone who's still figuring out where the bow is. "You are pirate. We," he continues, as though confessing your crimes on your behalf. Then he smiles, not kindly. "Good. You will fit right in." You spend your first day learning that the French Navy runs tighter than any pirate crew. Orders fly fast, discipline faster. The food's better barely, but the rum is rationed with the cruelty of a miser. You try to blend in, mimic the rhythm of their work, nod along when you don't understand the words. They laugh often, but you suspect most of the jokes are about you. When you make a mistake coiling the rope, one sailor shouts something that sounds beautiful and insulting all at once. You admire the poetry even as you scrub the deck twice over. By the second night, you realize your recruiter's faster ship wasn't entirely a lie. She's quick, slicing through waves like a blade. But the cost of speed is constant motion. No rest, no pause, just wind, orders, and the faint scent of powder that never seems to fade. You ask a crewmate what happens when they find another vessel. He grins, all teeth, and makes a cannon gesture with his hands. "We say bonjour," he says, and then we make her quiet. The first battle comes before dawn. You wake to the sound of drums and chaos. The captain stands tall at the helm, shouting commands like a conductor leading an orchestra of thunder. You load powder, light fuses, run until your lungs burn. The air fills with smoke and screams and the taste of metal. You don't know who you're fighting, just that it's not for gold, not for freedom. It's for someone else's flag. When the noise dies, the deck's slick with salt and blood. The French captain lights a cigar, surveys the wreckage, and murmurs something that sounds like poetry but feels like victory. The crew cheers. You stand among them, half deaf, half dazed, and realize this isn't a mistake anymore. It's employment. Later, staring at the stars, you think about the recruiter's smile, the promises that sounded so much like hope. You can almost hear his voice again, warm and convincing. Faster ship, richer prize. He wasn't wrong. You just misunderstood the prize. It isn't gold, it's survival, and you're getting good at earning it. The first time you touch a cannon, it feels like shaking hands with something that wants to kill you. The metal's cold and slick with salt, the air heavy with the promise of explosions. You're shown how to load it, powder, wadding, shot. But the explanation is delivered in French, shouted over wind, and punctuated with laughter that doesn't sound encouraging. You nod anyway, pretending confidence, and hope physics is more forgiving than the captain. The order comes fast. Phew. The men around you move in perfect rhythm, pulling ropes, ramming rods, lighting fuses. You mimic them with the energy of someone acting in a play they haven't rehearsed. When your turn comes, you light the fuse, step back, and brace for what you think will be a polite boom. Instead, the cannon explodes with a sound like the world ending. The recoil slams you backward onto the deck, knocking the wind clean out of you. You lie there blinking at the sky, trying to decide whether you've died or just become part of the ship. The captain leans over you, grinning through the smoke. "Magnifique," he shouts. You blink, dazed. The cannonball, as far as you can tell, has gone nowhere near the target, possibly backward. The captain doesn't care. "You have the soul of an artist," he declares. You consider asking if he means that as an insult, but decide against it when he pats your shoulder with something that might be approval or pity. The rest of the crew finds your performance deeply entertaining. They slap your back, hand you rum, and recount the story to each other like it's already legend. The Englishman fires at God himself. Someone cackles. You raise your cup and drink, because rum forgives what skill cannot. The next round goes better, though mostly because someone else takes the fuse from you. You focus on hauling the cannon back into position, your arms burning, your ears ringing. There's an art to it, you learn. The rhythm of loading, aiming, firing, it's almost musical. The thunder rolls down the line, one cannon after another, shaking the deck like a heartbeat. Smoke billows thick and acrid, filling lungs until breathing feels optional. The smell of powder clings to everything, the air, your skin, the inside of your teeth. And through it all, the captain paces behind you like a conductor, shouting encouragement and insults in equal measure. By the third hour, you start to notice something else, the silence between the shots, the moments where the world holds its breath, waiting for the next explosion. That's when it hits you how small you are, standing on this floating splinter in an ocean big enough to swallow everything. Every blast you fire feels both defiant and pointless. The cannonball disappears into the horizon, swallowed whole, and the sea doesn't even notice. You start to understand why sailors drink. After practice, the deck's littered with spent wadding, scorched ropes, and men pretending their hands don't shake. The captain toasts to Le Courage, and everyone drinks like they mean it. You sit with the others, still half deaf, your pulse matching the echo of the cannon. Someone jokes that you nearly killed a seagull, and another swears he saw the bird flip you off mid-flight. The laughter rolls across the deck, easy and hollow. When night falls, the smell of gunpowder still hangs in the air. You sit by the rail, watching sparks from the lanterns drift upward before vanishing into the dark. The sea looks calm now, deceptively so, as if it hasn't just tried to throw your soul into chaos. You think about the cannon, how it roars and shakes and then falls silent again, waiting for someone foolish enough to light it. Maybe the sea's the same way, patient, powerful, indifferent to who wins. You finish what's left of your rum and lean your head back against the wood, feeling it hum faintly beneath you. Around you, the crew hums, snores, dreams. You're starting to see the pattern now, the endless cycle of fear, fire, and laughter. Freedom, you realize, isn't what they said it was. It's not peace or glory. It's surviving the noise long enough to raise a cup to it later, pretending you meant to all along. The merchant ship appears on the horizon like a mirage made of promise and panic. The captain spots her first broad sails, heavy cargo, moving too slow to be anything but doomed. He grins like a wolf, seeing a lamb with a limp. "Sugar run," he says, the words dripping greed. The crew erupts into motion, all ropes and curses, hauling the Mercy's folly into the wind. You can feel it before you understand it, adrenaline tightening in your chest, the ship surging forward like it smells blood. The chase has begun. The merchant's crew sees you coming, of course. Their sails bloom wide, desperate. But there's no escaping a hungry ship with hungry men aboard. Cannons thunder, smoke rolls across the deck, and the sea turns to chaos. You grip a rope tighter than prayer, heart hammering as the Mercy's folly leaps through the spray. The air tastes like salt and gunpowder, and for a moment, the fear burns away, replaced by something wilder. You're not watching life happen, you're inside it, teeth bared, flying toward it at full speed. "Boarding party," the captain bellows, and suddenly, you're climbing the side of another man's livelihood with a cutlass that feels far too heavy for comfort. The first thing that greets you is smoke. The second is a sailor swinging wildly with a belaying pin. You duck, stumble, and accidentally trip him. He goes down hard, his head clanging against the deck. The world stops for half a second. Someone cheers. "Brilliant strike," they shout, and before you can correct them, another voice yells, "Look at the new lad, bold as brass." You nod like that was exactly your plan, trying to look heroic while mostly trying not to vomit. The fight doesn't last long. Merchant crews rarely fight hard when the alternative is survival. The captain of the prize, a thin man with eyes like polished marbles, surrenders fast, his hands shaking as he mutters something about insurance. The crew gathers them all on deck while your quartermaster oversees the spoils. Barrels of sugar stacked like treasure chests, crates of rum that sparkle like bottled temptation, and cloth fine enough to make even the bosun whistle. The air smells sweet, thick, and wrong. You'd think wealth would smell cleaner. When the loot is divided, you get your first share, a small pouch of coins, a cut of sugar, a bottle of rum you definitely didn't earn. You hold it all in your hands, the weight of it foreign and thrilling. This is it, the promise that drew you into this madness. Riches, freedom, your own name written in salt and smoke, except it doesn't feel the way you imagined. The coins are sticky with spilled syrup, and the sugar clumps between your fingers. Even wealth, it seems, sweats in this heat. The crew celebrates like men who've just robbed the gods and gotten away with it. Someone strikes up a song about glory and rum, though the lyrics fall apart halfway through. The captain makes a toast to fortune, folly, and the sea, and the men cheer loud enough to scare the gulls. You join in, your laughter blending with theirs, though you're still not sure what exactly you're celebrating: the victory, the spoils, or the fact that you're still alive to taste either. Later, as the sun drops and the ocean glows red, you sit on the deck beside your share. The sea is calm again, the chaos spent, and the merchant ship drifts behind you, empty now, stripped clean. Another ghost added to the horizon. You watch it fade, feeling something between pride and unease. The captain passes by, humming, his boots sticky from the sugar spilled across the boards. "First prize," he says, nodding at your loot. "Doesn't it feel fine?" You look at the coins glinting in the dying light, the rum bottle reflecting fire, the sugar crusted to your skin. "Aye," you say, because that's what you're supposed to say. But the truth sits heavier than the gold. Wealth isn't the prize. Survival is. The sea gives, the sea takes, and tonight she's simply decided to give you something to count before she changes her mind again. Port looks different after blood and sugar. The harbor gleams with sunlight and deceit, sails fluttering like gossip in the breeze. Every man here plays a part, and every smile's got a knife tucked behind it. The pirates swagger, the merchants flatter, the officials count their bribes with bored precision. It's a delicate dance of pretending not to see what everyone's doing. The governor's men drink with smugglers, smugglers dine with soldiers, and somewhere in the middle of it all, you're just another sailor trying to look like you belong to whichever side's winning this week. The Mercy's Folly rests at anchor, her hull creaking softly, half her cannons covered to look more respectable. The crew's already scattered into the alleys and taverns, leaving behind a skeleton guard and the smell of salt and gunpowder. You follow the noise inland, boots sinking into mud that's trying to be a road. The town's an open secret, everything for sale, nothing for keeps. A child sells trinkets carved from bone. A woman with gold teeth sells maps she probably drew during a hangover, and a drunk claims he once saw mermaids and charges extra if you ask him to describe them. You find a tavern that looks less like it serves food and more like it hosts confessions. Inside, the air's thick with tobacco smoke and ambition. The bartender doesn't ask for coin until you've already finished the drink, which feels like faith or foolishness. The walls are lined with sailors' carvings, names, hearts, and promises that didn't last the tide. You scratch yours in too, smaller than the rest. It feels good to leave something behind, even if it's just proof you were here long enough to drink. That's where you meet the preacher. He's not dressed like one more rum stains than holy robes, but he's got the voice for it, low and steady, like someone who's bargained with both heaven and hell and knows which one gives better rates. He sits beside you, asks if you believe in divine forgiveness. You say you're not sure the divine has time for sailors. He grins, raises his mug, and mutters a prayer over it that ends with, "And may this rum never run dry." Then he drinks deep. "God understands thirst," he says. You believe him a little. He tells you the sea's just another kind of church. "It punishes pride," he says, "rewards faith, and baptizes everyone, eventually." You ask which kind of faith it prefers. "The desperate kind," he answers, without hesitation. You don't argue. Desperation, you've learned, is the truest currency out here. Later, you wander the docks again. The sun's setting, bleeding orange over the water, and the whole port glows like it's been painted over its own sins. The merchants are counting their silver. The pirates are counting their lies. The officials stand on the piers, arms crossed, pretending the world makes sense. It's all theater, really everyone pretending to live on land while the sea owns them all the same. You spot fingers in an alley, trading a stolen compass for a handful of coins. He grins when he sees you. "Evening, preacher," he jokes, holding up the silver like a relic. You ask how much he'll tithe, and he laughs until he nearly drops it. "Ain't no laws here," he says, "just tides." You can't argue with that. As night falls, music spills from the taverns, and the port comes alive again. Songs, dice, deals whispered in corners. Somewhere, a fight breaks out. Somewhere else, a wedding. It's impossible to tell which is which until someone starts bleeding. You pass the preacher again, now blessing a bottle for a group of sailors too drunk to know what they're being absolved for. His voice carries through the noise, steady, strange, maybe even holy. You lean against a post and watch the flickering lanterns reflected in the harbor water. The world wobbles there bright, upside down, and truer somehow. You realize it's not just pirates who live between laws. It's everyone. The difference is pirates admit it. You raise your cup toward the reflection, toward the crooked world you keep chasing, and drink until the horizon blurs into something that looks almost merciful. It starts with whispers. They always do. You hear them in the galley, first low, sharp, and eager. The cook's pretending to sharpen his knife, but he's really counting the names of men he thinks will follow him. Fingers leans against a barrel, pretending not to listen while listening very hard. The word mutiny drifts through the air like smoke, dangerous, thick, impossible to ignore once you've smelled it. The captain's gone mad, they say, talking to the sea again, laughing when there's nothing funny, singing to the rat like it's part of the crew. Someone swears they saw him pour rum into the compass and call it a ritual. It's not courage that stirs the men, it's fear. Fear's the only thing that moves faster than wind on a ship. By dusk, the whispers have turned into plans, quiet ones, but plans all the same. You're in the middle of it, though not by choice. You're sitting too close when Fingers says, "Tonight," and everyone nods like they're agreeing to pass the salt. The idea is simple. When the captain comes above deck, a knife in the back, a quick toss overboard, and freedom for about 5 minutes before the next disaster. You keep quiet, though your stomach turns with each detail. You've seen what mutiny looks like in stories. It never ends with applause. Night comes heavy, humid, the sky bruised with clouds. The men gather on deck, shadows hunched and restless. You grip the rail, your mouth dry, wondering which is worse, killing a madman or trusting one. The captain's cabin door creaks open. He steps out, coat unbuttoned, hat askew, the rat perched on his shoulder like a grotesque parrot. He doesn't look afraid. He looks amused. "Gentlemen," he says, voice calm, even warm. "Is this the part where we kill me?" No one answers. The silence stretches until the wind itself seems to hold its breath. Then he laughs, not a manic laugh, not the kind you feared, but something rich and alive, echoing across the deck. "I would too," he says, still smiling. "If I were you. But before you decide, let me tell you what you're throwing away." He strides to the helm, barefoot, steady as the sea around him. "Liberty," he begins, "isn't a word some king gives you when you bow low enough. It's what you steal when no one's watching. It's the sound of cannon fire against tyranny and the taste of rum you didn't pay for. It's every sunrise that finds you still breathing when the world swore you wouldn't." His words move like waves, rising, crashing, carrying everything with them. "And equality," he adds, his grin flashing in the lantern light, "means the same rope for captain and crew if we fail. But if we win," he lets it hang there, the promise glowing brighter than gold. Fingers is the first to lower his knife. The cook follows, muttering something about fair shares and full stomachs. One by one, the men nod, their anger dissolving into cheers. The captain raises a hand, half salute, half benediction. "Then it's settled," he says. "We drink, we sail, and we take the next fat merchant we see. Bigger loot for all." The deck erupts laughter, shouting, the metallic ring of blades sheathed instead of swung. You cheer too, mostly out of relief. You didn't want to die tonight, and now it seems you won't. Later, as the rum flows and the ship rocks gently beneath your feet, you spot the captain leaning over the rail, singing to the Ariandid horizon. It's a low tune, sad and strange, half hymn, half lullaby. The rat sits beside him, twitching its whiskers like it's keeping time. Maybe he really is mad. Maybe he's just the only sane man left in a world that's lost its mind. You can't tell anymore. When dawn breaks, the crew's asleep where they fell, dreams sticky with rum and freedom. The captain's still at the helm, eyes on the rising sun, humming that same song. The rat scurries along the ropes, pausing to look at him, as if nodding its approval. You can't help but smile. The mutiny's gone, swallowed by the sea and his words. But deep down, you know it'll come again. It always does. Out here, madness and loyalty sail under the same flag. The smell hits first iron, sweat, and something sharp that never quite fades. The ship's surgeon works in a cramped corner below deck, a place that feels more like confession than medicine. Candles sway with every movement of the sea, shadows stretching long and thin across the blood-slick floorboards. The tools gleam in the flickering light, knives, saws, and clamps that look like they were invented by someone angry at bones. There's no table, not really, just a plank set across barrels, stained darker than wood should ever be. The surgeon hums as he works, a tune that might have once been cheerful before the ocean got to it. He's a man of contradictions. Gentle hands, rough voice, a mouth full of jokes that no one laughs at, maybe because most of them end with, "if he lives." His coat is spotted with old blood and new rum, his hair tied back with string that looks suspiciously like used bandage. Pain, he says to no one in particular, is proof the body still cares to stay. Then he pours brandy into a chipped mug, half for the patient, half for himself. You're not sure which is the anesthesia. The man on the plank is named Harris, or was, before the cannonball found his leg. He's pale, breathing fast, clutching a rosary made from dice. The surgeon takes one look and sighs. Below the knee. That's mercy. Harris doesn't seem convinced. The bosun and fingers hold him down, their knuckles white. You take your place near his shoulders, hands pressing firm against his trembling chest. The surgeon raises the saw, the blade catching the candlelight, and for a moment you think you might faint before the patient does. The first cut is sound before it's sight. The rasp of metal through flesh, the sharp intake of breath, the muffled scream that seems to hang in the air. The brandy doesn't dull much, just slows his shouting into something quieter, something that sounds almost like prayer. The surgeon hums louder to drown it out, working quick and precise, as if speed might trick the body into forgiveness. Sweat runs down your neck, cold and thick. You focus on the rhythm of his movements, the back and forth sawing, the way his lips move in silent counting. It's horrible and mesmerizing all at once, like watching lightning strike twice in the same place. When it's over, the leg hits the deck with a dull thud. The surgeon wipes his hands on a rag that probably retired from its job as a shirt years ago. Done, he says, almost cheerfully. He'll live, if he wants to. He corks the stump with tar-soaked cloth, ties it tight, and nods to the carpenter waiting nearby. You'll need to make him something fancy, he says. He's got the face of a man who'll brag about it. The carpenter grunts, already measuring. Harris, delirious, starts laughing a thin, cracked sound that rattles through everyone present. Call me Peg, he says, and somehow it sticks before the bandages do. You stay behind to help clean. The deck looks like a battlefield that forgot to stop bleeding. You scrub the planks until the water runs pink, listening to the creak of the ship and the low hum of the surgeon as he sharpens his tools again. You'll get used to it, he says without looking up. The first time's always the hardest. You ask how many first times he's had. He smiles without teeth, all of them. Later, above deck, the air feels too clean, too wide. The sea stretches endlessly, blue and innocent, as if it hasn't been listening to the screams below. The crew moves quieter tonight, every man walking a little slower, aware of how close the edge really is. Peg sits propped against a barrel, grinning like he's cheated death in a card game. He raises his cup in salute. Still got one leg in hell, he jokes. The laughter that follows is thin but real. You look out over the waves, the horizon blurring with the smoke of battle long gone. You think about the surgeon's words, about pain as proof of staying. Maybe that's all survival is proof you're still stubborn enough not to sink. The ship groans beneath your feet, alive in her own way, and you realize how narrow the space is between living and legend. Just the width of a plank. The first step on land feels wrong, like the world's forgotten how to hold still. The dock doesn't sway, but your body does, convinced it should. You stumble forward anyway, boots striking wood that feels too stubborn and dry to be trusted. The air smells different here, less salt, more sin. The port hums with noise and life, laughter spilling out of taverns, music too fast to keep up with, and the faint clink of coins exchanging hands for promises no one intends to keep. Shore leave, the crew calls it. Freedom, for however long your money and self-control last. The first tavern is already too full of sailors pretending they don't know each other. You join them, because pretending is part of the ritual. The room tilts in the soft lamplight, walls painted in sweat and spilled rum. A fiddler saws away in the corner like he's trying to set the air on fire, and you're dragged into a dance before you can protest. The floor heaves under stamping feet. Laughter rises, and you forget for a moment that your legs still think you're at sea. Someone hands you a drink, then another. The taste is terrible, which only proves it's authentic. You lose track of time the same way you lose track of your coins gradually, and with enthusiasm, Fingers challenges a local to an arm wrestle and wins 3 mugs, then loses all 3 to gravity. The cook sings a song about mermaids that somehow becomes a drinking game involving imaginary fins. The captain disappears early, leaving behind a trail of admiration and unpaid debts. You dance until your knees ache, laugh until your ribs hurt, and for one night, the world feels wide enough to hold you. It's late, maybe very early, when the music fades into a softer hum. The tavern has emptied into the street, spilling laughter into the darkness. You find yourself sitting at a table that's missing a leg, sharing a bottle with a woman whose name you never quite catch. She's got a scar along her jaw and the kind of smile that looks both promising and dangerous. "You're one of the Follies lot, aren't you?" she asks, voice low, eyes sharp. You nod, because denying it seems pointless when your shirt still smells like tar and ocean. "I'll see you next voyage then," she says, tapping her cup against yours. You don't remember what you said back, but it must have been convincing because she laughs. Morning finds you in an unfamiliar room with sunlight stabbing through shutters like it's personal. Your head feels hollow and full at the same time. You sit up slowly, notice your boots are gone, and realize your eyebrow is, too. There's a smudge of ink on your arm, something that might be a drawing or might just be evidence of poor life choices. A note sits beside you on the table, written in looping handwriting. "Next time, bring better rum." You stare at it for a long moment before folding it neatly into your pocket, because some debts are worth remembering. The walk back to the ship is quieter. The streets are half empty, the night's noise replaced by the soft groans of people making peace with daylight. The sea smells stronger here, cleaner somehow, like it's calling you back before you make more trouble. You pass the preacher from last port, asleep against a barrel, clutching a half-empty bottle and mumbling something about redemption. You nod respectfully, because everyone's got their own religion. When the Mercy's Folly comes into view, she looks almost gentle in the early light. The crew's gathering again, some limping, some laughing, all pretending the night didn't happen exactly as it did. Fingers waves from the gangplank, his face red, his grin enormous. "Lose anything important?" he asks. You touch the spot where your eyebrow used to be. "Nothing. I wasn't finished with," you say. He laughs, slaps your back, and together you climb aboard. The captain's already at the helm, humming something tuneless, his eyes on the horizon. The sails fill, the ropes creak, and the sea opens her arms again. As the town fades behind you, you promise yourself quietly, foolishly, that next time will be different. It won't be. But for now, the wind is kind, the ship alive, and the world too big to worry about what you've lost on land. The nights stretch longer now, soft and heavy as wet rope. The days blur into salt and sun, the horizon always just out of reach, and the only thing sharper than the wind is the silence that creeps in once it dies. Then someone starts humming. It begins small, a tune without name or purpose, something hummed through cracked lips while mending a line or cleaning a blade. Another joins, then another. Soon the deck hums like a living thing, low and rough, a kind of heartbeat made from voices that shouldn't still be standing. The songs aren't elegant. They stumble like the men who sing them, words bending with accent and drink. Some are about women left behind, others about storms survived or captains cursed. One's just about a stew that allegedly bit back. The verses shift each time, depending on who's alive to remember them. You learn quickly that the point isn't truth, it's rhythm. Truth gets you killed. Rhythm gets you through. You try singing once, quietly, when you think no one's listening. Your voice cracks, rough from salt and smoke, but it fits. The sea swallows the sound and throws it back softer, like it's willing to meet you halfway. By the second chorus, fingers claps your shoulder, off-key and unbothered, and suddenly the whole crew joins in. It's a mess, loud, tuneless, beautiful. You're not a singer, but no one on this ship is. That's not the point. The point is to remind the ocean that you're still here. When the wind picks up, the voices lean into it, shouting laughter between the verses. The sails groan overhead, the ropes hum, and for a moment, the whole world seems to keep time with the song. Even the captain joins from the helm, his voice deep and ragged, half sermon, half curse. He sings of the sea like she's both lover and executioner, the only one who's ever truly known him. The rat sits near his boot, twitching in approval, as though it's heard this ballad too many times to be impressed. Later, when the singing dies down, the stars come out in full thousands of them, scattered like spilled coins across the sky. They look close enough to touch, though you know better now. You lie on the deck, back pressed to the boards, the ship rocking beneath you like a cradle built by drunks. The air tastes of tar and smoke, and the faint sweetness of rum. Around you, the others quiet, their laughter fading into snores and murmured dreams. The sea whispers against the hull, a slow, patient rhythm that never ends. You think about the songs, their strange power, how they fill the empty spaces between fear and sleep. The melodies aren't about glory or gold. They're about holding on when the world wants to pull you apart. About memory and madness and the fragile joke of still being alive. You hum a verse under your breath, something about home, though you're not sure where that is anymore. Maybe it's here, between the planks and the stars, surrounded by men who sing because silence feels too much like surrender. The wind shifts, carrying the tune out to sea. Somewhere beyond the dark, another ship might hear it, mistake it for ghosts. Maybe they wouldn't be wrong. The men around you are half dead already, bound to a life that eats more than it gives. But the song makes them human again, if only for a verse. As dawn breaks, pink and trembling, you find the captain still awake, humming the last line to himself. He doesn't notice you watching. His eyes are on the horizon, far away and unreadable. She listens, he murmurs, like he's speaking to the sea itself. You're not sure if he means the ocean or something deeper beneath it. You look out too, where the water meets the sky and the world begins again. The song lingers, faint as breath, still circling in your head. It's not about words. It never was. It's about remembering what it feels like to be alive when everything around you keeps trying to make you forget. The fog arrives without warning, swallowing the horizon in a single breath. One moment, the sea stretches wide and bright beneath a clear moon. The next, the world folds in on itself, color and distance stripped away. The Mercy's Folly slows to a crawl, her sails whispering like they know something you don't. Lanterns swing from the rigging, their light cut short, bleeding into the mist until it looks like the ship's bleeding fire. Every sound feels too loud, the creak of the boards, the scrape of a boot, even your own heartbeat. Somewhere in the haze, a bell tolls once. Not from your ship. The crew gathers at the rails, voices low, half whispers, half prayers. The fog parts, just enough to reveal it. Another vessel, close enough to touch, gliding beside you without a sound. Her hull is pale beneath the moonlight, her sails ragged, but not torn by wind. They hang still, as if the ship's being carried by something other than air. No flag, no movement, no crew, just silence so thick it feels alive. The captain steps forward, hat in hand, his face unreadable. He raises it slightly, a salute that feels both respectful and afraid. "Evening, sisters," he says softly. "To the ship or the sea, you can't tell which." No one laughs. The fog presses tighter, thick as breath, and for a moment it feels like both ships are holding still in time, balanced on the edge of something unseen. You expect the captain to order distance, but he doesn't. He just stands there, still as the mast, watching the ghostly outline move in perfect parallel. You can see the shape of her decks now, empty but for coils of rope and what might be a toppled barrel. The air smells colder near her, sharp with something metallic, almost sweet. A sound rises so faint it might be your imagination. A low hum, the kind a ship makes when it's dreaming. Fingers mutters that she's a Dutchman's widow, cursed to wander until the sea forgets her name. The cook swears he saw one like her years ago, right before a hurricane took half his old crew. The surgeon, who believes in nothing, crosses himself anyway. You keep your eyes on the lanterns, forcing yourself not to stare too long. The fog plays tricks. It bends light and reason both. You remind yourself that stories are how sailors stay sane. And yet, someone gasps. You look up before you can stop yourself. There, on the other ship's deck, stands a figure, barely visible through the fog, motionless but distinct, a human shape, framed in the pale light. It's facing your crew, watching, or maybe waving. The gesture's slow, almost tender, like someone saying goodbye from very far away. You blink, and the figure is gone. The captain lowers his hat again, murmurs something you can't hear, and turns away. "Hands off the rail," he orders quietly. Eyes forward. She's got her own course. The crew obeys without question. No one breathes until the fog begins to lift, thinning like smoke. The ghost ship fades with it, slipping back into the dark as silently as she came. When the last trace of her vanishes, the air feels heavier, as if the sea's taken something from you in exchange for letting her pass. Hours later, the ship creaks and groans as if sighing in her sleep. The men speak softly, careful not to say too much. Some claim the figure waved farewell. Others swear she was warning you to turn back. The captain says nothing, but he keeps a lantern burning at the bow until sunrise, its light steady, stubborn, almost defiant. You sit on deck long after the others have gone below. The fog's gone now, replaced by a sea so calm it feels wrong. You watch the water, searching for ripples, for proof, for anything at all. Nothing moves, only the stars reflected back at you, bright, cold, and countless. You tell yourself it was just the mist, the drink, the mind playing tricks. But as the waves rock beneath you, you can't shake the feeling that something out there saw you too and chose to let you go. The rumors start as whispers carried on the wind, drifting from one ship to another, soft as gull cries at dawn. You hear them first in port-over tankards and lies about the king's navy growing restless, about governors sending fleets with shiny cannons and clean uniforms. They say the world's running out of patience for men like you, that the age of freedom is ending. You laugh, because everyone does, but the laughter doesn't last. It never does when the music stops and the truth starts to sound like thunder on the horizon. The captain calls it nonsense. The sea has no kings, he says, raising his mug, and for a moment you want to believe him. You want to think ocean still belongs to the mad and the bold, to the ones too stubborn to kneel. But deep down, you know better. You've seen the ships, their hulls gleaming like armor, their sails white as judgment. You've seen the look in the merchant's eyes when you boarded last week, the way he wasn't afraid, just tired. Even your enemies have started to lose interest in hating you. That's how you know an era's dying, when fear turns into indifference. The crew pretends nothing's changed, but you can feel it in the way they move. Fewer songs, quieter laughs, longer stares at the horizon. Some talk about taking the king's pardon, settling somewhere warm with enough coin to buy silence. Others scoff, loading pistols just to feel the weight of something certain. Fingers jokes that pirates don't retire, they just sink slower. No one laughs at that one. At night, you lie awake listening to the creak of the ship, the soft slap of waves against her hull. The Mercy's Folly feels older now, her planks groaning like bones that have carried too much. She's been your home, your curse, your coffin in waiting, and you wonder what she'll become when the ocean decides she's done her part. You think of land, of solid ground and quiet mornings. The thought used to make your stomach twist. Now it makes your chest ache in a way you can't name. The captain stands at the helm one evening, his coat snapping in the wind, his rat perched on his shoulder like an admiral. They can have their laws, he mutters, but they'll never cage the tide. The crew cheers, but it's half-hearted, like the echo of a prayer everyone stopped believing in. You watch him, wondering if he knows it too, that even tides change, and no one gets to sail forever. A week later, a storm rolls in, not the kind with thunder and rain, but the kind made of sails, dozens of them, lined across the horizon like teeth. The Royal Navy, hunting what's left of the old world. The captain orders the Folly to turn east, away from the fleet, but there's no running from what's already caught you. You can smell the iron in the air, the scent of order, clean and merciless. The men move fast, reloading, retying, pretending they still have a chance. But the ships don't come for you. They pass in the distance, chasing some other doomed crew. You watch them disappear into the gray and realize it doesn't matter. The ocean's shrinking, the world's closing its hands around it. The golden age isn't ending with a fight, it's fading, slipping quietly beneath the waves like everything else that dared to be free. That night, the crew drinks in silence. No songs, no boasts, just the sound of cups against wood and the soft murmur of men remembering who they were before they learned to steal for survival. You sip slowly, tasting salt in your rum, wondering if it's from the sea or your own sweat. The captain raises his mug, eyes distant. To the end of the world, he says. No one disagrees. You look out over the black water, stars rippling on its surface like shattered gold. Somewhere out there, other ships are sinking, burning, surrendering. Somewhere, the world's moving on without you. You dream of land again, of stillness, but when you close your eyes, all you can hear is the sea whispering, soft and endless. It doesn't beg, it doesn't promise, it just waits, like it always has, knowing you'll come back. Because men can leave the ocean, but the ocean never leaves them. The first cannon shot sounds like the sky splitting open. It rattles your teeth and sets every nerve in your body on fire. The sea erupts around you, white spray mixing with black smoke, the air thick with the stink of powder and burning rope. The Mercy's Folly groans under the impact, her timbers shrieking like a wounded animal. Men shout orders that vanish into the roar, and somewhere in all that chaos, you find your hands moving before your mind catches. Uploading, aiming, firing, surviving by instinct alone. The enemy ship looms ahead, close enough now that you can see the faces behind the gun ports, pale, hard, terrified like yours. The flags above her deck mark her as royal, bright and proud, the kind of color that looks obscene against the smoke. You fire again, and the recoil sends you stumbling backward, ears ringing, vision pulsing white. Someone shouts your name, maybe, fingers, maybe God. It's hard to tell the difference in the noise. The captain stands at the helm, his coat whipping in the wind, sword raised like it's an argument he refuses to lose. His voice cuts through the chaos, half battle cry, half sermon. Give them thunder, he roars. Let them learn the sea remembers. His words carry something that sounds like madness and faith all tangled together. Even the rat on his shoulder seems to listen, its whiskers trembling in the smoke. You want to laugh, but your throat's full of grit and fear. The deck is slick beneath your boots, red and wet and unsteady. A cannonball rips through the railing inches from your arm, showering you with splinters that sting like hornets. The man beside you falls without sound, his body folding in on itself as if he's suddenly very tired. You step over him because you have to. There's no time for grief. Not here. Grief is a luxury for men who live past the noise. The ships collide, hulls grinding, masts snapping like ribs. Grappling hooks fly, ropes tangle, and suddenly the fight is hand to hand, close, brutal, real. You parry a strike, lose your footing, swing wildly, connect with something soft. The world narrows to the sound of breath and steel and the pounding of your own heart. The air tastes of iron. Every blink brings flashes of light, fire, faces you don't recognize. Through it all, the captain keeps shouting. Not commands anymore, just words, ragged and furious, the kind you throw at death when you know he's listening. We are not shadows, he bellows. We are storms made flesh. You see him on the quarterdeck, blood on his sleeve, sword raised high. For a moment, he looks untouchable, larger than the ship itself. Then a shot rings out, sharp and final. He sways once, twice, and the sword slips from his hand. The rat stays where it is, unmoving, as if waiting for him to start laughing again. He doesn't. Someone calls for surrender, but no one moves. The flag above you wavers, torn and blackened. When it finally falls, it's slow, almost graceful, like a curtain closing on a play that's gone on too long. You don't lower your weapon. You just stop holding it like it means anything. The enemy climbs aboard, guns drawn, faces blank. You're too tired to hate them, too tired to care who won. The sea quiets as if nothing happened. The smoke drifts upward. The horizon flickers with the last embers of fire. You look around at what's left, the broken masts, the fallen crew, the blood that looks too bright against the wood. Fingers sits nearby, staring at nothing, lips moving silently. Maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. You lean against the mast, feeling it shudder beneath your weight. The air smells of salt and loss. You realize there's no glory here, no victory, no story to be sung. Just men who played at being gods until the sea reminded them what they were. You close your eyes, the world tilting softly beneath you. For the first time, you stop fighting not out of surrender, but because there's nothing left to fight for. The sea keeps moving, steady, indifferent, endless, and you understand, at last, that she always wins. You wake to the sound of the tide breathing in and out, slow and even, like the sea's fallen asleep beside you. The sands cool beneath your hands, fine as flour, clinging to your skin as if it knows who you are. The air smells of salt and old wood, and somewhere far off, a gull laughs, a sharp, lonely sound that almost feels like a joke. You forgot the punchline too. You open your eyes, blinking against the glare, and realize you're on a shore you don't recognize. The world's too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after everything's already happened. The wreck of the Mercy's Folly lies down the beach, her ribs jutting from the surf like the bones of something once proud and alive. The waves lap at her gently now, not angry anymore, just tired. You make your way toward her, each step sinking a little deeper into the sand, your boots heavy, your body heavier. It's strange how the ship looks smaller now, like the sea finally decided she'd been too loud for too long. Bits of rope and splintered wood are scattered along the tide line. You find a half-burned barrel, a torn bit of sail, and, improbably, the captain's hat. It's missing its feather, but it still smells faintly of smoke and madness. You hold it for a long moment, feeling the weight of it, then set it down on the sand. The sea reaches out and takes it back without hesitation. You sit where the water can just touch your feet. The tide hums softly around you, a tune older than any shanty you ever sang. You listen, because that's all there is left to do. Every wave carries echoes, rum-soaked laughter, fingers' terrible singing, the captain's voice booming poetry at storms. You can almost hear the rat's little claws skittering across the deck, the clink of dice on wood, the creak of ropes that never stopped complaining. All of it rolling back and forth with the tide. You close your eyes, and for a moment, you're there again under the stars, the ship alive beneath your feet, the sea breathing against the hull like a giant asleep, the air thick with smoke and salt and song, the world so wide you could almost believe it had no edges. You remember the feel of wind in your teeth, the rush of battle, the warmth of firelight on faces that would never be saints. The sea didn't promise happiness, only freedom. And she kept her word. When you open your eyes again, the sun's lower, bleeding gold across the waves. You think about how many stories end here, in the same place they began, with a ship, a horizon, and someone foolish enough to chase it. Maybe that's all being a pirate ever was. Not greed, not rebellion, just refusing to stand still while the world built walls. You can almost laugh at the thought, but your throat's too dry. The sea does that, gives you words, then steals the voice to say them. A wave rolls higher, washing over your legs. It's cold, but not unkind. You lean back, letting it climb your chest, your shoulders, your face. It feels like being remembered. The water whispers through your hair, the same way it whispered through the rigging 1,000 nights ago. The tide's rising, but you don't move. You've spent too long fighting her to fear her now. The last thing you see is the sky wide, endless, shifting from gold to gray to the deep, dark blue that once wrapped around every dream you had. Somewhere out there, maybe another ship sails, another fool sings, another story begins. But here, the sea's calm, the world's quiet, and you realize it's enough. She gave you chaos and laughter, storms and scars, and when you were done, she gave you rest. You smile, because it's the only thing left that still feels like you. The tide hums the old songs, carrying your story back into her endless, murmuring heart. And then, softly, like a secret kept too long, the sea takes you home.